Hello, welcome to the Peace of Mind channel. We are an organization dedicated to making the world a better place. We are engaged Buddhists concerned with climate, the environment, peace, and goodwill. Today I will be your moderator. I am known as Dharma Peace.
I'm Dharma Ocean.
And I'm Dharma Sense. Welcome to our channel.
Yes, today we will be having an icebreaker episode. This is so that you get to know who we are and the key topics that we are concerned most about. But before we start asking some questions, I want to just go ahead and let our audience know what we mean by our Dharma names. We will be going by our Dharma names in the future. So my Dharma name is Dharma Peace. And the Dharma name is a Buddhist tradition where it's basically started since the Buddha himself. And a Dharma name is something that teaches us an aspect of our lives. We are granted a Dharma name by our abbot or anyone who is ordained and who is able to pass the name onto us. So again, my name is Dharma Peace. And let's now start with the icebreaker questions, my friends. What does your Dharma name mean to you? So if either of you would like to offer, or I could answer first if you like, so that we can.
Why don't you go first? Because I think mine, my icebreaker question is different. So you go ahead.
Okay. So for me, I am. So I started my adult life in the United States Army. I was an infantry soldier. I've seen basically what war and fighting does to a society and to a person's psyche. And when I took on Buddhism, it was basically a form of therapy, and you might even say like a means of what was the word I'm looking for? A means of repentance for what I had done and the sort of violence and sort of mischief that I had caused in my younger adult life. So when I got onto the course of Buddhism, basically the thing that I came to care most about was making peace. That means making peace in my own mind, but also making peace in the world. So that's what my Dharma name means to me. So if Ocean or Sense, if you would like to answer about your Dharma name.
Ocean, go ahead.
So our abbot Kai Tien, he first gave me my Dharma name, and I didn't think it was very relevant to me. And for probably like a good few months, and I was like, why did he call me this? I don't know. But maybe, I mean, like, I also didn't know him that well either. Like, it was my first time meeting him when I took refuge. I wanted to take refuge because I wanted to get more involved in practicing Buddhism. So I at the surface, I really didn't think he knew like what to give me, and like just gave me this name, Ocean. But after a few months, I kind of started realizing I think that name actually is appropriate. Not only does it sound cool, but I think it's like kind of relevant to how I feel, especially like the emotions that I get. I'll feel like I'll have like waves, like literal waves inside of me it's like an ocean of emotions, and I think that it's oddly appropriate to how I experience like an internal phenomenon. So that's what my Ocean, my Dharma name Ocean means to me.
It's a fantastic answer.
That is fantastic. That is really like, it actually surprises me, because when I think of ocean, I think of something vast and with seemingly endless capacity. So I thought when our abbot named you Dharma Ocean, that's also what I saw there, was this vastness and capacity to learn and to accept and to transform. That was basically, so your
That could be
take
where
is also,
that could
Very
be where
interesting.
Kai Tian is coming from. Like that might be the reason why he named me that. But I have a little bit
Yeah.
of a different association with it. You know, because like during meditation, I'll sit and I've had experiences where like I'll feel the emotion and I'll almost like see it in a way, and it'll feel like liquid, and I'm like, whoa, this is so cool. Like, you know, I am the ocean basically.
Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome.
I
Well, how
love the
about you,
way the
Dharma?
name came to have more meaning for you over time. I think that that's really
Yeah,
cool.
I like grew into it, you know, because at first I was like, ah, whatever, just a name, right? It's whatever. But then I was like, okay, I really like this, and I actually kind of enjoy going by Ocean rather than like
Yeah.
my legal name. Honestly, it's got more meaning for me.
Yeah, I immediately thought it was fitting, and it's great. So I'm glad that you've grown into it.
For sure.
um, so in Dharma sense, how about your Dharma name? What would you say
Well,
it means to
in
you?
Buddhism, we learn that jealousy is something that we want to avoid. But when when Dharma Ocean received his name, I thought, boy, that should have been mine. I mean, man,
Oh my
here,
goodness, yeah. Maybe we could
right?
ask
And
our abbot to annul the. Not sure that
I
we
live at
want
the
to.
beach. So, but no, and I say that in jest.
Okay.
I just kidding. Taking refuge was such a monumental step in my life, and such a. I'm so grateful for having done it, and any name bestowed, I would have been grateful for at the time. Why our abbot came up with the name Dharma Sense, I really don't know. I have no idea. Um, what I tend to associate it with is right view, which is part of the Noble Eightfold Path. Having good sense is like having right view, good right view. And so I tend to think of it along those lines. I like to joke that maybe Kai Tien thought that I didn't have any sense and needed some. Um, but that's essentially what the name means to me. As much as the sense part of it is important, the Dharma part of the name is more important.
Yeah, so thank you guys both for explaining your Dharma names. It's I both explanations were awesome, and I appreciate that. um, so my next question for you two, and then maybe if you want to ask, if you could change your Dharma name to another name or another word, what would it be? So I think Dharma, since you already answered this, would you turn it back? Would you actually ask our abbot, hey, can you annul my Dharma name and make it Ocean?
At this point, I've gelled with the name to the point where
Yeah.
no, I would never want to give it up. It means too much to me at this point.
All right. Well, okay. Thank you, Dharma Sense. How about you, Ocean? Would you change your name? Would you ask for an annulment there?
I would say no. I think personally, I think it would be like, in my opinion, a little bit disrespectful to be like, "Hey, this name that you gave me, I actually don't like it, and I need another one." I think it would be a little bit distasteful to to do that to our habit. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And respect is a big thing that we all share in. Yeah, and for me, peace is just perfect. The fact that he named me that is just it's just astounding. So thank you too. Um, so I think okay, so I had another idea. If we could use the first letter of our Dharma name to describe who we are, or to give more of an insight of who we are, is there something that you could say? Like, for example, my name is Dharma Peace, or we could just call me Peace. The P would be for patient. And I figured this is a good word for me, and that's because, like, as a teacher, I have to be patient. So do either of you have something similar to that?
Maybe maybe opportunity, because lately I'm trying to kind of get out of my shell and like do things I either don't normally do, or just like try new things and meet people and like make new friends. So opportunity.
Ooh, I like that. Okay. Sense, you're up to bat.
Great one, Ocean. The first word that comes to mind is sensitive, and sometimes that's good, sometimes it's too much. Um, my family, my that I was raised with, my sister especially, loves to tell me that I'm too sensitive. Um, but it's also, I think, a good trait. Um, Sometimes you can develop, ideas in your mind because you're sensitive. You worry about things that aren't necessarily true, and so it can be problematic. But other times you're clued in and you're more sensitive and more maybe empathetic where other people are not engaged, and so it can also be beneficial and it can be helpful. But it's the first thing that jumps out in my mind, that I would say would be an accurate description.
Thank you. That was very wholesome, and I commend your humble introspection. That was awesome. Thank you. And so I guess we can move on to the sort of meat of this video, and that is what our actual objectives are as far as this organization and what this channel, what we're trying to convey in our channel and impart in our channel. So the next question I have for you two, and then maybe I'll speak at the end, is what issue concerns you most? So whether it be the environment, whether it be peace, or well-being, or all the above. But if you had to pick one topic, what would be the issue that concerns you most?
For me, I think lately what I care the most about is environment. Um, I, since I was a kid, my mom actually is like a huge like personal and environmental advocate. I mean, she doesn't like go to meetings and like she's not like an activist or anything, but she does what she can for herself and for my family to like reduce, reuse, recycle, and do what she can for the environment. And at first, like as a kid, I kind of thought that was a little bit annoying. But like, why are you always trying to like, take home stuff from restaurants and recycle it? It was like I thought it was a little weird. But now I have a lot of respect for her for that, and I'm grateful that she imparted those values to me. So for me, it's just the environment. I want to be able to reduce my the impact that I have and be able to protect the animals and the people and the creatures and whatever, what have you, so that they are not being harmed by humans.
Yeah, that's very admirable. Thank you. Um, and how about you, Sense?
Uh,
What are you concerned most about?
well, I think that we live in a time of polycrisis, where there are many crises happening at the same time. So pick your crisis. My Since 2006, I've been very concerned about the environment, about climate change. I own a solar business for that purpose, and to battle against climate change. I try to offset as much carbon in my personal life as possible. Um, so it's top of mind. However, I think our political climate in recent years is making that battle against climate change much more difficult, and I tend to now see the problem as a problem of will and a problem of politics. So, in order to solve the climate crisis and to solve deforestation and to solve the plastic situation, we have to have less division in our society. We need to do things like this, which is an outreach program essentially, and trying to attract other people that would also be engaged in this kind of activity. And so, what's most important to me? Well, yeah, climate, yeah, environment, but I see it kind of all in the same bag now. And so it's really an issue of where do you focus your attention? And so I
Yeah.
guess that's where I'm at with the whole thing.
Yeah. Well, thank you for that. I just want to let you know I agree with you wholeheartedly. Um, our policies are not, they just don't come from the ether. Like the measures that we take either succeed or do not succeed based on decisions that are made at the highest channels of authority and power. So it is actually beneficial for us to look there and consider what could be done and how we could persuade people into hopefully making a change for a more positive impact.
Because what is needed is it's wonderful that individuals make individual change, but for truly the kind of the effects that we need to have to occur to avoid catastrophic warming, things like this, we need systematic change.
Yeah.
And systematic change is not occurring. Systematic change, right now, the oil companies are on track for, they've got extraction policies already on paper that are going to wind us up at 2.4 degrees Celsius. People are still talking about 1.5. Well, we've already shot past 1.5 already, and we weren't supposed to be there for another 10 years.
Right.
And so it's an urgent situation, and it needs addressing.
Yeah.
Immediately.
But if you don't mind, just for the sake of time, I just wanted to address, my issue of concern, my key issue. So, and that is actually something that our viewers will hear from me often is something called the culture of violence, and something called the military-industrial complex, and things of that sort. For me, the key issue is the culture of violence, which means that the fact that just about everywhere people believe there should be standing armies, and that war is a legitimate endeavor of statecraft. But I believe that this could change, just like things like in the past, such as chattel slavery, the slave trade, like transatlantic slave trade. Those things had changed and they had become taboo in realms and states where there is such a thing as the rule of law, and our cultures have somewhat prevailed in sort of addressing chattel slavery and slave trade, and I think that in the same way we can change the paradigm when it comes to statecraft, war as a statecraft, like a legitimate means of settling disputes. I believe that could change in the future, and maybe not in our lifetimes, but maybe 100 years down the road, 200 years, who knows? But that is something that I sort of advocate, because basically the process of militarization, I have been a part of it, and I do know that it takes a lot of effort to persuade someone to first view themselves as some sort of combatant, and then to have them, commit acts of combat towards other people, whether that is, and I want to avoid hard terms like as far as, ending lives and things like that, because if this is going to be on YouTube, I'm going to make it a little bit more accessible. So like ending lives and those sorts of things, that should be addressed in my view. So that is my key point of concern, and like and I am also concerned with the environment, and I essentially, when it comes to militarism and basically a lot of our discretionary budget and a lot of our resources are allocated towards the military industrial complex. And that is a direct contributor to climate change and environmental issues as well. Not to mention that animals and just living beings in general are put in direct danger when it comes to combat. Entire species are subject to endangerment, and not to mention that the people that are the most casualties occur with civilians. You know, people, the news media, they count uniforms as far as lives lost, but all in all, non-combatants make up the bulk of those who lose their lives during conflict. And the
Yeah.
people that pay the price are, the majority of them are not combatants. So this
Right.
is an issue that I feel
What's taking place in Gaza right now?
exactly.
Yeah, that's a good point to mention too, because like during World War II, obviously they dropped bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and that was
Yes.
mostly civilian deaths. Not only that, but you know, like you were saying, it is interrelated. This problem of the military and the environment. I mean, when you drop a nuclear bomb on a town like that, the environment can't exactly recover. You know, very easily at least.
Indeed.
Not to mention, you
And every
know,
time,
tens of thousands of people have died, and then you know, Vietnam War, same situation. A lot of civilian
yeah,
deaths and destruction of the environment. So, I totally agree with you.
every weapon that is proliferated could be fuel for another potential weapon, or it could be multiplied, or it could be, you know, there's so many things. So that's why we have that term non-proliferation, so that we can try to avoid the spread of uh, weapons that could wind up just creating mass destruction, or even, or it doesn't, like, for me, you know, we take the first precept, which is not to kill, and not to encourage others to, and to discourage taking life. And so I believe that I am actually putting priority on the first precept very explicitly. I did mention a couple of things like in this regard as far as Buddhist tenets. I mentioned precepts, for example. But for our audience who doesn't know, we have a lot of tenets in Buddhism, which means that we have a lot of codes and a lot of rules and a lot of sort of guidelines that put us on the Buddhist path. So, what I wanted to ask you, brothers, is what is your favorite Buddhist tenet? And I think to just kind of preface this and give you some room to breathe, I was just going to offer mine. Um, so my favorite Buddhist tenets are the Brahma Viharas, which are also called the abodes of Brahma, which basically they are they in themselves explain what they are. So the first tenet is compassion, called karuna, compassion. The next one is metta, loving kindness. The next would be sympathetic joy. And for me, there's another one that I've interpolated, and I always say this. Even if I'm speaking publicly, I say this is something that I have deduced should be a part of these, because usually we only count 4 of them, but in reality, I think that there's actually 5, and I think the Venerable Thich Nhat Hanh even said as much in a few of his lectures. But the fourth one that I consider is nonviolence. So it's called ahimsa. But it's also that first precept that I mentioned. And finally, there's equanimity. And equanimity is essentially realizing it is a call to actions for us to balance our own emotions and not to allow them to take hold of our, like, we don't want to embody our emotions. But also, equanimity means our outlook as well. Like when we look at what's happening in our environment, what's happening with people among us, we don't want to judge too much one way or the other. We want to just acknowledge what's happening but not to allow it to affect our minds, our state of mind. And these are the abodes of Brahma, so called because they're mental faculties that once we embody them in our minds, then they are actually a dwelling for our minds, so that we can live in peace and in comfort of a peaceful state of mind. So, brothers, do you have a tenet like this?
Well said, Peace. Yeah, the Brahma Viharas is actually one of my favorites as well. I try my best to embody them and to keep them in mind. Um,
Well,
but
thank you.
my favorite teaching, I'd say, would have to be the Four Noble Truths. And it's the Buddha's very first Dharma talk or sermon. Basically, for those who don't know, the Four Noble Truths are uh, the truth of suffering. Basically, that in life there will be suffering or dissatisfaction, and there's not really any way out of that. It's just kind of our disposition. We are naturally going to experience old age, sickness, death, losing your family, and not getting the things that you want. Those are the ordinary forms of suffering, and we're all going to experience that. It doesn't matter where you are, who you are. So that is the truth of suffering. And then there is the arising of suffering, which is suffering is brought about, or dissatisfaction is brought about because of craving or thirst, tanha in Pali. And this is, there's basically three kinds of thirst. There's thirst for becoming, thirst for unbecoming, or death. By becoming, I mean like growing more and more in terms of like an ego, like I want more money, more power, more women, or more might, things like that.
Right.
And then the last one is thirst for sensual desire. And that can be any kind of sensory inputs, the king of them probably being more like sexual interaction. But any kind of sensual experience that you have, wanting more of that. So like drugs or alcohol would be another good example of that. Craving those kinds of things, those sensual experiences. And then the third noble truth is the cessation of suffering. We can basically end our suffering by removing thirst. If we eradicate that, then we will be peace and equanimous. And the fourth noble truth is that there actually is a practice, right path, that leads to the cessation of suffering, and that is called the Noble Eightfold Path. And so that's more or less the entirety of the practice, is to commit to this Noble Eightfold Path so that we can reduce suffering in our lives and for the people we care about, the people around us.
It's the Noble Eightfold Path for me, because that's what I try to walk every day. I really, when I think about it, our practice, it's what I'm trying to incorporate consciously in my mind every day, beyond meditation, beyond, our time that we're sitting, etc. But when I'm out there in the real world, that's how I'm relating myself to the world, is through the path, through right view, through right action, through right speech, through right livelihood, etc. So I would have to say the Noble Eightfold Path for me.
People think that rules and guidelines and frameworks that they are that they lead to bondage, or lead to sort of like living a life of suppression or confinement. But actually, we Buddhists believe that these things help liberate us from a lot of just suffering in general, but also just it is liberating. Would you agree with that, brothers? Would you agree that because since I started on this path, I haven't ever felt more free than now.
Oh, definitely. It's weird because like in order to progress on the path, you have to give up so much.
Yeah.
You really have to kind of step away from the life that you were living and become more detached. And it's like I'm giving up so much, but I'm also like gaining so much at the same time, like in terms of how I feel. Like this is probably some of the happiest times of my life that I've had, because like in college I was struggling a lot with depression and anxiety, and once I started meditating and actually putting into practice some of these things, I'm noticing I actually feel much better in my life. I feel a lot more at peace, and I feel like I can form better relationships with my family and friends. So I totally agree with you. At first, it's very difficult though, because you'll be very attached to certain things, and you're like, oh, well, I'm not sure what to give up, and it can be a challenge for sure. But I think it is in your long-term benefit to do so.
Yeah, indeed. Would you agree, Dharma Sense?
Fully. And I second what Ocean said. I've honestly never been happier in my entire life since I've taken up the practice. It's improved my relationships, it's improved my work, it's improved my life in general.
In my life, I can say that I have a testimony, testimonial that the Buddha way, the Noble Eightfold Path, and being in this lifestyle and in this Sangha has transformed me. Like, I have become an entirely different person. And from one who was not concerned with the environment, not concerned with other lives, and now I'm fully like that is what my whole life gravitates around. Every aspect of my life has improved, and I can also convey my concerns skillfully as opposed to unskillfully, which is like, instead of creating contention and creating conflict, I can discuss my concerns without arguing, without imposing myself or insisting that I'm right. That's the real gift of the Buddha Dharma, I think. Would you agree, brothers?
Yeah, definitely. Something
Right.
I think we should clarify though is that we're not trying to convert anyone, any of the viewers.
Yeah,
If you
right.
want, if you
Buddhists
are a
don't
Christian
convert,
or of some other religion, continue
yeah.
doing what makes you happy. You do not have to be a Buddhist. But for
Thank you
us,
for-
this is
yeah,
our
thank you for saying
testimonial
that,
of how it benefits us in our lives. And of course, we're going to encourage other people to practice,
Yeah.
should you be interested. But by no means are we gonna like wag our finger at you for for being a different religion, you know?
Right. Yeah. Thank you, Dharmotion. Buddhists just in general are not. Don't proselytize. It is not part of our practice. We
We
meet
don't
people
pray
where.
to a god.
Right. And we don't. We meet people where they are. So if you believe in Christ, more power to you. If you believe in Muhammad, more power to you. And if you're Jewish, of course. So Buddhism is not in competition with other belief systems. But what I'm trying to communicate is that the Buddha has some insights into how to lead a civilized life without causing conflict. So I guess we are going to close with that. But I just wanted to mention before we go that peace of mind is dedicated towards something a little bit bigger than ourselves. We would like to help galvanize other groups and people who are concerned about the key topics that we're concerned with. So I would like to leave with just one more token of information, and then we'll if you can, please like and subscribe to this channel. It would help us out tremendously. The final token that I want to leave with you is a saying in Buddhism called sadhu sadhu sadhu. So a lot of people, you might see that in Buddhist circles. Sadhu 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 is basically a way of almost saying like amen, or basically applaud someone for their efforts. So my friends, if you've gotten through this whole episode, this pilot episode, sadhu 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 to you.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
All right, brothers, thank you so much. I look forward to the next episode. Take care, everyone.
Peace.